Hello and welcome to Right from the Kickoff with your host Joe Wright, and joining me as always, and it's going to be taking a bit more of a lead role because you're feeling a lot better today, aren't you? Will William Bayliss? How are you,
Yeah,
mate?
I'm very well, Joe. It's good to feel a bit more of myself after obviously I had surgery last Wednesday, so I was a little bit out of it, as you could probably tell from my voice, but I'm good and raring to go and looking forward to chatting about some football.
Awesome, right? Obviously, these podcasts are the ones we'll be doing over the coming weeks. I think it's fair to say we'll be doing hopefully about one a week if we can. Over the Euros, maybe a bit more depending on how England progress in the tournament. But obviously, we're going to be talking about England today and their opening round fixture against Serbia. But to start this podcast off, I just want to talk about, again, we're looking at it from a Leicester and Forest perspective. The fixtures have just come out today, haven't they, Will? I mean, what I want to say to you is, first of all, how are our Forest fixtures looking?
I mean, we're looking good. I don't mean to make too much of a joke out of it, Joe, but we're playing the teams, all teams twice, home and away, so it's always a good start. But particularly, I'm happy that we're playing home first, and home the last game of the season as well, which we haven't had since we've returned to the Premier League. So happy about that. Long overdue. And what do you think, Joe?
Yeah, I'm happy with our fixtures as well. I mean, let's look at the first sort of, if you want to take it, first 5 fixtures for Forest. Let's look at those first, and then we'll look at the back end fixtures as well. Just run me through the 5 fixtures that you start off with and how they're looking.
Of course, Joe. So at home first, we have Bournemouth, and then away a week later, we're playing Southampton, and then we're playing Wolves at home, and then we have 2 hard games away at Liverpool and Brighton. So a good mix of harder teams and newer teams and teams which we'd like to think we could get something from, particularly Southampton and Wolves, and potentially Bournemouth first game of the season at home, but you never know. How about yours then, Joe?
Yeah, well, if we look at Leicester's first opening fixtures, we've got, let me just get them up. So we've got, first of all, Tottenham at home, which I particularly quite like. One of the big boys, or the big 6, so to speak, first off at home. Monday night as well, Monday night kickoff. And then we've got Fulham away, Aston Villa at home, Crystal Palace away, Everton at home, and then I think to finish off the first 5 fixtures is Arsenal away. So again, very much like Forest, a good mixture of kind of harder teams and teams that you think you can maybe get points off. But again,
yeah,
I
for
think,
sure, very similar in that sense.
Yeah, I think to be honest, you know when you come into this level, both us now are experienced at this level. Obviously, Leicester coming into it brand new, but in terms of fans, Leicester were, before they got relegated, were there for 9 years previous, so still fairly fresh for me in terms of remembering what that's like. Pretty happy with those opening fixtures, and hopefully we can get some points.
We haven't even talked about the elephant in the room yet, Joe. When Forest and Leicester are going to play against each other. So
yeah, well, actually, I was gonna go on to this. So if you don't mind me talking about I'm going to go into this. So Forest and Leicester. First game is Leicester at home on October the 26th. So that's the first Forest Leicester. But then going into the back end fixtures, if we look at them, just give me a while to get them up. So we've got in our last 5 fixtures, and there's a reason I've kind of left Forest till now. So for Leicester, it is Wolves away, Southampton at home, Forest away, and Ipswich at home, and then Bournemouth away. So I think for Leicester there's some winnable game. They're all winnable. I mean, in terms of if you were to put the teams in a pot who's going to be in and around Leicester at that point, I think the last 5 fixtures for Leicester are actually quite favourable.
Yeah,
so
you're just hoping that it's not too little too late by that point.
Yeah, I think
the points deduction. But I think as long as you're thereabouts with the last 5 games, I think you'd be safe with that last run.
I think, to be honest, if we're at that point, for me, if we're sitting in 18th and only a couple of points off at that point, I'd take that now. because I'd expect us to get some points out of those last 5 games. So I'd be quite happy with that where we sit. I mean, for Leicester in a whole, I think we just need to be there or thereabouts, and I'd snap your hand off for 17th at this point in time. You know, that's where I am as a Leicester fan. I'm not pulling any punches. If we can stay up, that would be a massive achievement for us this season.
Yeah, and I've said this to you away from camera, but I think if it wasn't for the points deduction, I would say you'd realistically finish, in my opinion, with your squad mid or lower mid table.
Yeah,
I think your squad's good enough to do that. It just depends on the points deduction, and the reason why Leicester got relegated wasn't on talent. It was on, in my opinion, was on the mindset. So as long as you get the mindset right, and not get complacent, I think you'll be all right.
I think that's exactly right. I think it's a case of Leicester just. But the thing is, I like the fact we're going in as underdogs this time round. You know, it's not going to be a massively disappointing season if we do get relegated. And what I mean by that is kind of not that I expect it, but it's like, okay, this is a possibility. Whereas last season it really did come out of the blue. The last season we got relegated. Anyway, just going into Forest before we move on to England. Going into Forest last 5 fixtures. Obviously, we've mentioned the
5 fixtures are this similar thing. So, the last 5 fixtures. So, Brentford at home on the 26th of April. Obviously, all of these dates are depending on TV. You know how Sky likes to move things around, and all the other
also cut runs and all
changes.
Yeah.
Followed by Palace away, Leicester at home, West Ham away, and the last game of the season is Chelsea at home. My worry is that, and we'll talk about this before the season kicks off, is that Chelsea, in my opinion, are going to be a lot better than they were last season, this coming season. So that's my worry.
I disagree. But we can get into that another time.
Yeah, that's a whole different podcast.
Yeah. I mean, there's just to briefly touch on it. There's a reason I disagree, and I think they've got an unproven manager. And again, I'm not going to bash Enzo Maresca because I think what he's done for us has been fantastic, got us up. But there was arguably a squad there that most managers who were half worth their salt would have got us promoted. So I do think, but to be honest with you as well, I'm not particularly sure that Enzo Maresca is going to be in charge by the time that they play Forest.
Yeah, it's a bit of a merry-go-round at the moment.
Yeah.
But on that note, shall we move on to England?
Yeah, let's do it.
So, the game against Serbia. I'll tell you what I think of the game, and then you say if you agree or disagree. First half an hour, we're like, oh, this is unbelievable stuff. Are we going to bring it home? And then I thought that we sat back and their substitution really had a big impact where they were a lot more progressive and we just didn't know how to handle that. The system itself, I was listening to something earlier, really interesting. I forgot to send it to you, Joe, and I will send it to you afterwards. From 442 YouTube channel. He was talking about the reason why Foden wasn't as instrumental is that if you look at the heat map between him and Bellingham are very similar. So they try to take up similar pieces of space. And obviously Bellingham's a lot more commandeering. And maybe that's why he was a bit out of sorts. As another point is that he wasn't in his natural position. What did you think of Foden in the game, Joe?
Did he play? That's what I think of Foden in the game. I think he ghosted. I just didn't really see much of him. I do feel like the system that Southgate...
Do you think that's his fault?
No, I think the system that Southgate's got set up for him is completely wrong. I think it's a difficult one for me personally because I know this is kind of going off kilter. You've just asked me about Foden, but I just want to touch upon Bellingham, considering you talked about picking up similar spaces. For me, Bellingham is just a touch above everybody else
Yeah.
in our squad. I mean, he was fantastic. You can sit there and you can say, England had a poor performance, and all of that, which I actually don't agree with. You look at our record, sort of kicking off the Euros. I think we've won 1 out of 9. In obviously the past 9, our record isn't great. So the fact that we actually kicked off with 3 points is a good thing, especially with the system now of four teams from each group get qualify in the third place spot. So I think we've all but done that job, which is what you've got to look at. And it's knockout football at the end of the day. Tournament football is mostly.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't worry too much. I think my only concern is, and this has always been a massive problem with Southgate, is you look at other managers and you look at kind of what the way we can go. The tendency has to get the team dropping back and dropping behind the ball and not be progressive. I think once we get 1-0, he almost tends to panic. I don't know what you think of that. It's weird.
Yeah, no, I agree. I have a question I have for you, Joe. Would you like to see England, when we do go 1-0 up, not to sit back and drop back? Because we saw that against Italy in the final of the Euros last year.
Well,
we went 1-0 up and then we just sat back and then hoped that we won't concede. And against a better quality side, you're going to get punished, aren't you?
Well, the thing is, as well, is, you look at that sort of 30-minute mark. What was the difference in between sort of that 30-minute mark and those 15 minutes, and then kind of made the changes for the rest of the game? What's the difference? Is we scored. It's almost like Southgate's got this thing where he's like, right, okay, we've got 1-0 up. Let's kind of shut up shop. One, I don't think we're good enough to do that. You look at our centre backs, we still gave some chances to Serbia. I remember when I think it was Gahey tried to pass it over to Stones and lost the ball.
Yeah, and Justin Gahey, that was his one misplaced pass in the whole game. So
yeah, I'm not. By the way, I'm not hating. I actually think he was one of our better players and had a great performance. I'm literally just pointing out the one chance that I can remember Serbia really having. So I did think he had a good game. I just want to make that clear. But I do feel like we're not good enough to sort of allow teams to come onto us. If you look at our team in terms of talent, and it's very top heavy, especially this time around with no Maguire. So we need to be taking advantage of that. We could have easily have kind of been 2 or 3-0 up at half time. And it would be a lot. And what I mean by that is progressively passing forward and going for the kill. But I just don't. I don't think Southgate's got that bone in his body, unfortunately. Sorry, Will.
Do you think that because we're so top heavy and we're clearly a lot weaker at the back, we sat back to protect the back line more as a result?
Yeah,
do you think we tried to contemplate with that?
Maybe, but my point is, if you look at the first 30 minutes, we were, until we went 1-0 up, in fact, if you look at that as a whole, we were much the better side because we had to go out and attack to get that goal. So what the only difference being, it's not a psychological thing. It's not a psychological thing. It's genuinely, I think, what they've been instructed to do by Southgate. There was a moment when Kobbie Mainoo came on, right, and obviously we were pressurised, and he made a great run, and Kyle Walker, there was a moment where he could have played him through, but he kind of just told him to calm down. He played the safe pass. It's almost like Southgate's telling them to play the safe passes, and you're not going to win tournament football like that against the better teams. You're just not going to do it. So I do worry in that sense. I don't think we've got a good enough manager, and I can see that now, especially with all the data that we've got from previous tournaments. It was fine when the expectation for England wasn't great. When he first came in, he got us to a semi-final, and he's done absolutely fantastic for us. But now we're at a point where we think we've got a good enough squad. We should be doing better, and I just feel like, I personally think this should be Southgate's last tournament, and I think it will be, because I think he's taken us as far as he can go. Even if he wins, even if he wins the tournament, I kind of want us to go into a different direction, and I'll stand by that.
Yeah. Let's go back to the game though, because what I kind of get from it, I think the word what we're looking for is momentum. We just lost all momentum, and once you lose that momentum, as we know, it's very hard to regain that. And whether that's a manager or the system, well, or because of the manager, or because of being sitting back, we lost all momentum and we didn't regain that. And I know we were talking about during a game, but during a game at the half time, we were like, okay, we had a really good half an hour. The last 10 minutes was a bit down, but we can kick off in the second half, get an early goal, and that just never materialized. We just carried on sitting back, didn't we, Jay?
Yeah, I'd agree. I think I personally, and this is a personal opinion, because I just want to go into some of the players. I agree with that. I think obviously we did lose momentum, didn't really get it back. But do you know who I think had a great game considering what his role obviously was? And I think he got a lot of hate because everyone's kind of like, well, he didn't do much. Let me just tell you before I mention this player's name, if we didn't have him up front and we didn't have him doing what he was doing, taking the niggly fouls, being that person to kind of take two of the centre backs away with him, then we'd have been under even more pressure. Which is obviously Harry Kane. I think he a lot of people don't understand the work he does off the ball. They don't understand his hold up play. Yes, I know he's in the team to put the ball in the back of the net, and very nearly did if it wasn't for a wonder save from their keeper. But I just think that if you look at the work in its entirety in terms of how much he's willing to work with the team and do the dirty things as a striker, the hard graft, Kane definitely achieved that for me personally.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree up to a point. I think because he throughout the game, because the whole team was dropping back, he dropped back as well, and then there wasn't any outlet up front. I think in a lot of the game, he was a workhorse all game, but he was quite isolated in that.
Yeah, but I think what I'm trying to say is even with that isolation, he did everything he could to kind of do his best for the team, and he did really.
I'm going to play devil's advocate now because I've heard a lot of people saying that Kane should have been taken off with 20 minutes to go and bringing on Watkins, which would have given a different dimension and might have helped us be more progressive up front. What do you think of that one?
I think we'd have ended up drawing the game if Watkins had come on. I
Really?
do, yeah.
Explain.
I think it was that kind of game. It developed into that kind of game where it needed that experience. It needed that workman horse type performance that Kane put in. And I feel that obviously to put Watkins in that situation again, we're not playing a great team in Serbia. No offense to them, we're not playing one of the world beaters in Serbia. But I do feel like there was definitely pressure coming, and you could see maybe a chance or a goal coming at some point. So I think the idea to keep Kane on the pitch for me was the right choice personally.
Yeah. I'm going to give you another name now, but after I've done that, I'm going to explain how I thought he did. Trent Alexander-Arnold. Obviously, traditionally, he's not a midfielder, but I can see why you're putting him there to be that quarterback role. My only worry with Trent is he lost the ball quite a few times around the edge of our own box, and that's because he's not used to receiving the ball with his back to goal, um, and and like under that pressure from a defender, where a Declan Rice wouldn't know how to deal with that. Would you agree with that?
I'd agree. I think Trent's getting some unnecessary hate.
Yeah,
From
I mean,
I,
it's not his fault.
I don't. I also don't think it was as bad a performance as a lot of sort of media outlets are making out. I think he had a okayish performance. I'd probably put it about a 5 out of 10. I think there were times, and there was a moment as well where we did create the overlap, and Trent had made it down, obviously the right hand side, and managed to whip a ball in, and was very close to um, creating a chance. I can see why he's in the team. It's just I think it's going to take a lot of getting used to. And if you look at the options that we've got in that midfield, we haven't got an array of talent, to go alongside Rice. Because who else have we got really to get in that kind of sitting role if you're going to sit as a two? Obviously, if you remember the last couple of tournaments, Calvin Phillips was kind of filling in that role. Of course, he's been nowhere near it and shouldn't be in the team, rightly so. But then you've got Kobbie Mainoo, who I think is a fantastic talent, don't get me wrong. But we haven't got that player who's got in-tournament experience to call upon for that role. So it's a difficult one for Southgate, because I do feel like that role is extremely important, and whether Trent will get found out later on in the tournament, which he could do, is something. But I don't think he had an especially bad game personally.
No, yeah, I think the areas game where he struggled, you kind of expected him to. So him being put in that position, you expect.
Yeah,
You kind of expected that performance from him. I'm going to put it like that.
I also think as well that you've got the ability then as well, if you do play Trent in that role, playing on that kind of right side of midfield in front of Walker, it allows Walker to make those marauding runs forward to kind of support
Which he almost scored as well with that. Yeah. He was unlucky with the finish.
To support the wingers, and then obviously Trent can drop back into that traditional right-hand side role that he's used to.
Yeah, I think...
I do get that choice. I do get it, and I'm a big fan of Trent, so I'm never going to slate him. I personally love Trent as a player, so it's a difficult one. But I'm not saying he had the best performance, but I also don't think it's anywhere near as bad as people are making out.
Yeah, because obviously we won, so you realistically only need 4 points to progress. But say if we beat Denmark, would you rest some players, or would you want to keep that momentum going forward?
It's going to sound crazy to say this, because he was by far our best player on the pitch. For me personally, if we get sort of 3 points from the next game, I'd potentially look at resting Bellingham for that game. The reason being is because he is our star boy, to be honest. In terms of for me, just be and not even just a little bit of visible difference in the rest of the squad, in terms of talent, in terms of what he can do. I mean, there were so many times where, even if it was in sort of a defensive role, midfield role, there were so many times where he just managed to turn his defender, which instantly created space for everybody else.
Yeah.
He's so good at that, and the amount of space that he does create for other players is ridiculous. And I think, to be honest, he delivered an 8 to 9 out of 10 performance, when realistically the rest of the squad, probably the highest was about a 6 after that.
Well, in terms of attacking options, I think defensively we did a lot better, which ironically is not what we expected. We thought it was going to be the other way around, didn't we?
Yeah, for sure. I think
so. Speaking of which, you kind of hinted at it there. Shall we go through the team, and you can give your score ratings for each, and just say a little bit about each player? Okay, you ready?
Fine. Do you want to give yours? Do you want to give yours first, or do you want me to give mine?
You give yours first, and then we'll bounce off each other.
Okay, no worries.
Okay, let's start with England. So obviously Jordan Pickford.
6.
Why?
I think the reason it's a bit lower than perhaps expected, he obviously made a good save in the second half, one that he should have saved because it was down his throat, but it was still a good save. But I just think that sometimes what he was doing is he was pumping it long when really it needed time to take the pressure off, whereas they were just coming back at us, especially in sort of the last 20 minutes, because he was pumping it long and we weren't holding the ball up very well.
Yeah. Trippier?
I'd say 5. I wasn't overly enamored with his performance, to be honest.
Yeah, I think if Luke Shaw was fit, he would be starting.
Yeah, but he's not. So I think Trippier is going to start the next game, and he's almost doing a fill-in role because he doesn't like to take the ball on his left foot either, does he? So he's obviously just a fill-in make left back, because he usually plays right back. I'm aware of with Newcastle. Yeah. So he's really sort of a makeshift role for him. So it's not his ideal place. But yeah, 5.
5. Gahey?
I'm going to give 7. I thought he had a very good performance, and minus his mistake, he'd probably been up there with 8, or probably I'd have given him an 8. But yeah, 7. only accounting for his mistake it being that low. But I
I,
thought
I,
he
I,
gave really good performance.
I, I'd give him 7.5. That was his only one misplaced pass during the whole game. Luckily, nothing came from it, but
That's what I'm saying.
it
But
could have done.
very nearly did cost us. That's why I've gone down to a 7.
Yeah, John Stones, I thought he wasn't 100% fit personally.
6 again. I don't think he's fit. I think he's obviously our best centre back, but I was a bit unsure about him at times.
Kyle Walker.
Again, I know it's going to be very basic, but 6 again. I wasn't really over enamoured with his performance. I had a really good run forward in the second half, which he could have potentially scored from, but didn't.
I think that's quite harsh on Walker. I think he tracked back really well and he used his experience really well. I thought he was. I'll give him a 7 because I thought he played better than Trippier.
The problem is with Walker and you have to really watch his performance, because actually I'm not saying he made any kind of blundering errors, but he does make a few mistakes. But the reason he gets away with it is because he can recover with his pace.
I think that's harsh on Walker personally because I think he's a lot more intelligent and he's a lot better player than people give him credit for. People just say he's just all pace, but he's got a lot more about him.
No, I'm not saying he hasn't. I'm just saying that his pace does allow him to kind of make up for those mistakes, which is an attribute he's got to use. So that's fair enough.
Yeah. Rice.
I'd say 5 or 6. You know, I
that's harsh.
No, I mean, look, we're looking at the England performance as a whole, and I do feel like there was not really. I'm not saying it's his job to kind of do everything in that midfield, but I just don't really feel like he did a lot. And there was a couple of times where, you know, he was out of position slightly. So yeah, it's a bit harsh, but yeah, I'd give him a 6.
I would give him a 7.5. I thought he had a really good game. He dropped back to help out the centre backs a lot. He won a lot of headers in the air, and he had that presence about him. And he just gives the rest of the team that ethos of, yes, I've got this. Don't worry if anything happens, which isn't his fault in the second halves in terms of not being as progressive, but it's not as his game as much. So I thought he had a lot better game personally.
The problem is, Will, and the reason why you get a lot of sort of average scores from me is, you know, we're holding these players to very high standards. You know, this player, Rice, has been touted as one of the best, if not the best, CDM in the world, right?
That's not his fault.
No, I'm not saying it is, but when you're comparing him to someone like Rodri, you know, you have to judge him on those type of performances. I'm not saying it is his fault; it's great for him, but when you're looking at the performances in general, you have to then mark it on a slightly higher scale. So yeah, 6 for me.
Okay, that's fair enough. Your opinion, Phil Foden.
4.
Yeah,
I didn't notice him.
I'd give him around a 5 as well.
Yeah, 4, 5, but yeah, I'm going to go for 4. In terms of, you know, coming off the back of a player of the season, you really want him to take the ball by the horn, so to speak, and he ghosted, mate. He wasn't really there.
Yeah, and I think the formation wasn't set up to him because everyone was roaming around. A lot of the players took up the same space as him, and yeah, I think he lost confidence throughout the game as a result of that as well.
Yeah.
Moving on to Jude, we all know what you're gonna say.
That's a 8 or 9 for me. I think he is just I know we say this a lot. We've said this a lot about English talent coming through, but I'm just so happy he's English. Like,
I know, right? Can you imagine if Musiala was in the team as well?
Yeah, no, I can. But honestly, I genuinely believe this, and it might come back to bite me. I genuinely believe, but we are potentially looking at a future Ballon d'Or winner from England.
Yeah.
I mean, he's quality. And
I don't think that will come back to bite you, Joe.
And
I think you're safe for that one.
Yeah, I just want to say as well, like, he's just got a bit of, you know, he's got a bit of arrogance about him, but in a good way. I think
that's what England have been missing.
Yeah,
really. Sure. I don't know if there's like a cultural thing where we're like, we don't want to be considered rude and stuff, but that's what the England teams have been missing. for years.
And
Years.
you know what I'm going to reference? There was a moment in the first half where obviously he kind of raised his hands up in the air, and then he just gave a little chest bump to one of the Serbian players. And for me, it wasn't just that was brilliant, but then obviously to then just walk back, and then the Serbian player kind of trying to get him to react, he just gave him nothing, absolutely nothing. It was just almost like, you're lucky to be on this pitch with me. And yeah, right, slight arrogance, but I loved it. Thought it was great.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. A player who we haven't talked about now, who I think in the first half had a really good game, Saka.
Yeah, I think if I could kind of score him for that first half, I'd probably give him an 8 or a 9. Second half brings it down a bit. I'm going to go for a 6.5. I thought overall, game wise,
Overall, yeah, that makes sense.
I think
But
he got pocketed a little bit by their wing back at the end, like in the second half. But first half, he was really breaking the lines, and obviously he was the reason we got that first goal in terms of the cross in.
yeah,
Got a bit of luck with it, but you got to be there and cross that ball in, haven't you? So.
in terms of a team goal, though, that was we haven't even talked about the goal. In terms of a team goal, it was really, really good. Like Foden, you say he didn't do much, but he did a lot with that cross where he brought that left-sided centre back out a little bit to create that space for the ball to go into for other channels of runners, and I thought that was really, really good. And obviously, Jude Bellingham, great header, great direction, and Saka was instrumental in that as well. So I agree.
Again, it's exactly where you want Bellingham to be, though, and it's the type of header you want as well. Really, just kind of thunderbolted it into the back of the net. Brilliant.
He's a true box-to-box midfielder, isn't he?
Arriving kind of in the space, exactly where you want him to be. Great header, great goal, and obviously got us the win in the end.
Yeah, I agree. Harry Kane, and then I'll move on to the subs.
I'm going to give Harry Kane a 7. Again, not his traditional performance, but I was happy with his kind of what he was tasked to do. I thought he did it very well, personally.
I would say 6 personally, because he did have a good game. He didn't have many touches, which arguably wasn't really his fault. But I think he's not 100% fit. So I'm going to give him a 6, and I think we should rest him a little bit. But that's my opinion. Moving on to the subs now. I thought overall the subs were good. Very like for like in a way that not changing the system as much, but I thought they all did their job well personally. Gallagher, first of all, I thought he won his little niggly fouls, and I think he really shifted the momentum and really broke down the game for Serbia. So it was harder for them to have that flow of keep attacking like it was a lot in the second half.
Yeah. In terms of a 20-minute cameo, which is what Gallagher gave, I thought it was easily a 7.5 in terms of really came on and delivered that energy. I'm not actually a massive fan of Gallagher. In terms of, I'm not really sure he should be in the team, but I was happy to see him fighting for everything, and he proved me. So.
Yeah, on that as well, I think his job is very underrated in terms of very underappreciated as well. So I think that might be one of the reasons.
I'd agree with that. I think I've not been a big fan of his, but that performance that he gave sort of for those 20 minutes, it was a good one, and I'm going to give him credit for that.
Yeah, Joe Bowen, obviously he almost set up a goal, and I thought he did really well of blocking the crosses, and he drove us a little bit more forward when we needed to.
Yeah. I think for me, again, those two players in particular just gave us that energy we needed. Because we were lacking in that department towards the end of the game. I thought that there was a moment for me as well, which I thought was good, that Bowen lost the ball on his side of the field and then came back and made the block. So it's like, all right, I've made a mistake here, but then he quickly made up for it by making that block for the cross. And it just kind of that point was like, okay, you can see why these subs have been made, because it just really did give us a bit of a lift in terms of the energy.
Yeah, obviously Mainu came on at 86, but I think it was a bit late on in the game. You can't really judge him on that.
one thing I will say, I'm not going to give him a rating because I don't think he was on me to give him a rating. But the one thing I will say for him is I liked the runs that he was also making from midfield. There was also a moment where obviously we weren't doing a press, but he managed to kind of run the keeper down into making a quick decision. So again, good energy. And I thought he was making some good runs for the brief time that we did see him. So I was happy with his kind of 5 to 10 minute
Yeah.
that he put in.
Yeah, I agree with that. One thing I would say about the subs is that I would like him to utilize the subs more effectively. Obviously, we have 5 subs. It's a marathon, not a sprint, and I think he could have shifted the momentum a bit earlier by making some subs.
Yeah,
What do you think of that?
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I think you mentioned to me after the game that you would have made it probably 5-10 minutes earlier in terms of substitutions, and I can't say I don't agree with that. I think rather, and this is where there's a lot of criticism for Southgate, rather than having to make changes, in terms of change it before that we get to the point where we need them. Do you know what I mean? Be like, right, okay, so I can see the momentum changing a little bit here. Let's make them now rather than sort of 5 minutes and 10 minutes into that.
Yeah. The one I'm going to play devil's advocate again because I enjoy it sometimes. But the one reason why I think he didn't is because he likes to watch players problem solve, which is obviously is a really good skill of, okay, it's up to you. You're the players. You're on the pitch. How can you get out of this situation? So I can see that, but I think he just left it a little bit a touch too long for me.
I disagree with that. I think I get the problem solving aspect, but it's your job as a manager to spot the problem, maybe even before the commentators, before the fans can. And you are the person that's in charge of that. I know it's for confidence, but at that point, we're not talking about hauling players off at half time. We're talking about, making that proactive decision, sort of the 60-minute mark, to just make sure we've got that energy to last us through to the end. I think as a manager, it's your job to make sure that we've got that ability, and it didn't come back to bite us or anything. But I do agree with you that we made the substitutions too late. So I get that you want to see the players last it out, but realistically, it's your job. You're paid to make those decisions and make those substitutions, and they're there to be used for a reason.
Yeah. So that was the game then. Denmark, would you go for a similar team? Would you rest any players?
I think I'd go for a similar team. I think I would really like to see Cole Palmer get some minutes, whether that's off the bench or starting. I personally think it would have been nice to see him. Other than that, the team kind of picks itself now for me. I think Gahey has really given himself that kind of second centre back spot. I don't think that needs changing now for me. I think if you try and sort of bring in anybody else into that spot, I think you're basically telling Gay he didn't have a good performance, which he did. So for me, he stays in, and the team itself pretty much stays the same. I do agree with you in the fact that maybe Kane should have a rest at some point. I just don't think this is the game to do it in.
Hopefully, if we win this game, then rest him a little bit, and then if we can bring him on, or at least sub him off at this point, because he's had a bit of an injury. He's been a little bit injured towards the back end of the season, so I wouldn't take any chances and make sure he's fit and healthy. If hopefully when we get to the knockout stages.
Yeah, the question I've got for you, and I know it's a worry, but if we had better centre back options, I'd honestly give Stones a rest. But I think we can.
I don't think we can afford to.
We can afford to, unfortunately, with the position.
Yeah, no. Unless we play a 3 at the back and play Kyle Walker on right centre back, which he has done in the past.
I just don't. I don't think you can afford to not play Stones at this point in time. And also, they'll have been working on these systems for weeks, so I don't particularly think changing it at this point is productive.
Yeah. But winnable game against Denmark because obviously they drew last game, didn't they? So I think, are you confident?
I think we'll get a draw. I do think we'll get a draw. I think, but that again will be enough to send us through to the knockouts. Realistically, if you look at the easy pathway, we need to be finishing top of this group. Just simply because we actually do have a bit of an easier pathway through. You know, I know you shouldn't really be talking that far ahead, but it is tournament football, so as fans, we're going to do that. But yeah, I think it will be a draw to start off with, and I think we go and beat. Is it Slovakia we've got in the last game? So
I
yeah,
believe so.
we'll just see what happens. But yeah, I do think we'll get a draw. What about you, Will?
I think we'll win. I think hopefully it'll be a bit more reassuring for us because you could tell that a win's a win, I know, but it didn't alleviate our concerns before the game. And I put that out on the Instagram story as well on there right from the kickoff. Make sure you follow us. The links are down below. I put that on because we had a conversation before. Is that we felt a bit underwhelmed, maybe probably because of the icing game, and we weren't happy with how it went about. And I do think the game did too much to alleviate our concerns bar the first half an hour. So I'm hoping for a more reassuring performance in the next game.
We'll see what happens. I mean, I wasn't blown away by the performance, but who knows? I think to be honest with you though, first game of the tournament, it's just important you get a win. You look at France last night, scraping a 1-0 win against Austria.
Yeah, that wasn't super convincing either, was it?
Yeah, what I'm saying is nobody's sort of sitting here now going, "Oh, France are definitely not going to be one of the favourites for the tournament." What I'm saying is it's just important you get the 3 points on the board. Each competition.
Yeah.
We're in the group stage at the moment, so we need to just get those wins, and that's exactly what we did. So you can't really play too much.
I 100% agree. So let's move on to some other games quickly before we finish. Sorry, other teams. Who has impressed you the most so far? Obviously, at the time of recording, we haven't had the final group games. Group F tonight: Turkey, Georgia, Portugal, or Czech Republic. But bar those 4 teams, is anyone who's really stood out for you?
I think a couple of teams deserve a mention, and they're not exactly teams you'd expect to go all the way. But I'm going to go on to yesterday's games. I thought Romania played a blinder against Ukraine. I thought
they played really well.
And they deserved a mention. And then, of course, you've got Slovenia against Belgium.
Joe, it's Slovakia, not Slovenia. Sorry, wrong way around.
Slovenia, Slovakia. You can't really blame me for that. Come on, Slovakia. You know they played a blinder against Belgium. Obviously, Belgium are an Asian team now and weren't what they were a couple of years ago, or sort of the last sort of 8 years. But it's still a great win. 45 places between those two teams, by the way. So absolutely fantastic win for them.
What a performance!
And you know, so they deserve a mention in terms of people who teams who I think could go and win the tournament. Obviously, Germany battering Scotland first game of the Euros. Again, it was only against Scotland. No offence, but you know, Germany for me are slowly becoming favourites. Obviously, depends what they do tomorrow. But we'll see what happens. I think it's going to be very interesting. I personally don't think I'm still happy with my prediction of England going out of the quarterfinals. Don't really think we've got enough to win it. Especially with
you hope you're wrong, but yeah.
I hope I'm wrong. Yeah, obviously I want us to go all the way and win it, but I'm just looking at it with a logical head on it. But yeah, and then France are always going to be there as well, thereabouts. And then obviously we'll see what Portugal do tonight. Thought Spain had a great first game as well.
The thing with Spain is that if you have a look at the game, Croatia were unlucky with not putting their chances away, so there might be a bit of a leaky at the back, Spain potentially, but they scored 3 goals.
Yeah, they did, and I think obviously you've got Yamina, the 16-year-old lad.
Yeah.
He looked obviously like one for the future. He looks great. Obviously, you got Williams on the left hand side as well, who played a great game. Morata, for all his hate that he got at Chelsea, and a lot of people don't rate him, obviously managed to get a goal there. It's quite good going down the centre. So attacking wise, Spain looked pretty decent. And I've said that I don't think Spain are going to win it. I still don't, but they did impress me in that first game.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with everything you've said in there. So let's just go on to score predictions for the next England game before we wrap up then, shall we, Joe? So score prediction for the final two games. So I know we touched on it earlier, but for the Denmark game, I know you said a draw. It's going to be a high scoring draw, or a low scoring draw.
I'm gonna go for a Desmond.
Desmond 2-2.
A Desmond
And
2. So
I'm looking at the things as well. Big game on Thursday as well. Spain, Italy. I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah, that should be a good game. There's some great games in that group because obviously Croatia being involved as well. I thought Albania acquitted themselves quite well against Italy, I will say.
Yeah, I thought they were unlucky in that game.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's always nice to see the minnows having good games and stuff. And these are teams and players that we don't, as fans of the mainstream media, don't get to see very often. So it's nice to see teams put in a good shift, and they really did. Obviously, Italy winning,
for sure.
but Albania definitely should be holding their heads proud for that one because they played great.
Yeah,
but yeah,
I agree. I think that's a tough group.
and then going just quickly for yourself, going on to the last game against Slovenia. What's your prediction for the England game for that one?
End on a high, 3-0 England.
3-0 England. I'm going to go for 2-0 England on that one.
Clean sheet then. Clean sheets all round.
Clean sheets all round. Yeah. I think England, personally, with my predictions, I think we'll finish with 7 points and top the group.
Nice. So let's bring it home.
Yeah, let's bring it home. Hey, the confidence isn't quite there as it has been in the past, but we'll see.
No, but I think if we win next game convincingly, I'll feel a lot more comfortable.
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
Yeah. So then, Joe.
All right, then, mate. Well, obviously, we will be back at some point, I believe, next week, potentially. Might even be sooner, depending on what our schedules are looking like.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that. And hopefully, fingers crossed, we can take it forward and England can bring it home. It'll be interesting against the game against Denmark, because I know some of your friends. Obviously, you've got Jasper, who has been on the podcast before. He's been, obviously, will be thinking about Denmark, and there's a few others as well, isn't there? So
yeah, Christian as well has also been on the podcast. But yeah, I'll see you next time, Joe. Make sure you drop the video a like and make sure you follow us on Facebook and Instagram.
Nice one, mate. See you next time.
See you next time.